Hello everyone, salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to today's event. Today we have a topic which is much needed these days in India because it is the assault on science and scientific temper in today's India. It was missing earlier too, but right now there is a clear-cut assault. And the speaker is quite a well-known personality, Gauhar Raza Sahab. He was a chief scientist at a government CSIR institution. He is a very well-known science communicator, a Urdu poet, social activist, and a documentary filmmaker. Partially, he will be introduced formally by Professor Meera Nanda, who herself is a very well-known historian of science, a writer, and author. Both are retired now, but both are very active in writing books, articles, giving speeches. So welcome you all. And now I invite Mirananda ji will do both part, a very brief, probably introductory part, and then a little longer concluding part. So welcome Meera ji.
जी हाँ, थैंक यू सो मच। और गौहर रजा जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत। मैं आपसे कभी मिली नहीं हूँ, बट इट्स गुड टू कैच अप एटलीस्ट ऑन ऑनलाइन। So yes, it's a great privilege to introduce Gauhar Raza, who's a fellow warrior in our shared fight, shared struggle to defend science from its various, very learned critics as well as politicians. So we have been fighting a battle, for keeping the idea of scientific temper alive in our part of the world. So it's a privilege to be attending this talk. And um, so as Razi ji has already introduced Gauhar ji, he is a well-known personality. He's spent a whole lifetime in actually doing science, and communicating. And a lot of scientists do science, but they do not, they don't reflect upon the method that they're using. So they compartmentalize science in the lab and everything else in their lives. So he's one of the rare breeds who uh, has reflected on the method of science and its importance in social life. Um, and he's an author of a recent book, from myth to science: the evolving story of the universe. I just came across this book. I wasn't aware of it, and I look forward to reading it. And the topic Gauharji is going to talk about is of great importance. As we well know, living in America, that the assault on science is not just happening in India; it's a worldwide problem. All authoritarians um, are to them, it's like they stay away from. They, Science is one thing that they do not want to engage with, primarily because any critical, any demand for evidence, any critique of what their ideologies is anathema to them. So in Trump's India, or in Trump's America, in Modi's India, science has been under assault. Rationalists, Gauharji included, have been under assault. So his topic could not be more timely. So I invite Gauhar Raza to give us his thoughts on what's happening in India. All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much, all the friends who have joined, and Professor Meera also. It's a privilege for me, Meera ji, and I'm a nervous person when some authority is present and now introducing me and the topic. So, yeah, uh, maybe I'll make a fool of myself during the coming 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Um, but it's definitely a privilege when you are chairing the session. Uh, so let me begin by trying to, I will not go into very many details. Some of your books have talked about uh, what scientific temper is all about. But I'll definitely uh, begin by posing a question that how come Nehru was the person who not only talked about um, the idea of scientific temper and also defined it. So let me read from his book how he defines scientific temper. I'm talking about Discovery of India. The scientific approach, the adventurous yet critical temper of science, the search for truth and new knowledge, the refusal to accept anything without testing and trial, the capacity to change previous conclusions in the face of new evidence, the reliance on observed fact and not preconceived theory. This is how he defines. And in my opinion, every word of this quotation is important if we want to understand what scientific temper is all about. Uh, but let me get back to this question that how come a politician is defining scientific temper in such a beautiful language, as if he has not only understood what scientific temper is all about and writes it in a very lucid language, but he has also summed up the debate which has gone on in India for about 100 years before him. So it was a difficult question to crack. But the only answer that I could gather was that the entire freedom movement leadership was made up of high level intellectuals. They could have done anything else also. But they decided to be leader of the freedom movement and do politics. And therefore, they were interacting uh, with the best of the minds in any and every field. They were in touch, direct touch, and personal touch with best of the scientists, best of the poets, best of the writers, best of the musicians and painters, and they were in direct touch with these people, which probably this environment around them, right from Gandhi to Nehru to Patel to Azad to, they were intellectuals themselves, yet they were being groomed as leaders of freedom movement by the best of the minds. They could interact easily with even Einstein. So that was one reason, probably, why and how Nehru could define. And he says very beautifully that scientific temper is temper of a free man. At another place, he says it is the application of conclusions arrived at within the four walls of laboratory uh, beyond the four walls of a laboratory. So when you try to communicate and implement and use those conclusions, data, and information, scientific information, to solve problems of society, then it becomes a scientific, it is scientific temper. But the other reason is also very important, that scientific temper is not only a project of science, though science is extremely important because that constitutes the bedrock of scientific temper, and science communication is extremely important. But it's not a scientific project alone. It's a scientific project, it's a cultural project, and more so, it is a political project. It also requires some amount of funds to communicate science within the society, to spread the scientific information, which our constitution says that is fundamental duty of every citizen of the country, which not only means that every citizen has to spread scientific temper and spirit of inquiry, but all institutions also have to spread scientific temper and spirit of inquiry and humanism. Now, coming back to what is happening today in India, uh, we need to compare it with what happened during the first 3 or 4 decades uh, in the country. Because there are many countries where this discussion itself did not take place, that what is scientific temper, whether we need to build institutions which carry out research in science, etc. There are many countries where it did not happen. But we were the first one, probably, when we were a completely dilapidated country. We were crushed by the British imperialism. And also, we were very poor country at that time, but we tightened our belts and said that no, because of Nehru's tall stature, no, we will build a base for scientific institutions as well as scientific temper. And it was an intense debate that took place. Though it did not percolate downwards to every nook and corner of society, but it did take place. And we were the first country who passed on what is known as science policy resolution. So it was being debated in the parliament. I'll not again go into details because time doesn't permit me. But it was also debated that there is this Kumbh Mela happening where anti-science superstitions are being spread. What is government doing about it? And this could be debated in the parliament. Today, you can't even think of mentioning Kumbh Mela as a place where superstitions are being spread. Though the intensity of spreading superstitions in Kumbh Mela has increased many folds as compared to what was being done in those periods. So let me come back to what is happening in India after 2014. Now, Prime Minister goes to Bombay within first month of after becoming Prime Minister, and he addresses a gathering of doctors there, and he says that one deity is evidence of plastic surgery in ancient India. Now, Ganeshji, because he has head of an elephant and body of a human being, is presented as an evidence of plastic surgery in olden days. Now, one can reject it, and a lot of people laugh at it. And whenever I mention this, whenever anybody mentions this, then people generally laugh. But remember that the gathering there clapped, which should cause shudder, at least among the scientific community, if not anybody else. Because it is the largest democracy's prime minister who is making such an estate. Now, why I'm worried about it, and I was worried about it, instead of just rejecting it as some illiterate passing a comment which is completely unscientific, is that when Nehru talked about scientific temper, there was a message which went down the line. Even the administration had to talk about scientific temper. Even the judiciary had to talk about it. Even the media had to talk about scientific temper. The education system was directed to inculcate to whatever extent they could, the idea of scientific temper. Now, when Prime Minister in 2014 says that you do not require any evidence and you can make a statement like this, is not a naive statement of an illiterate person. It is a statement given by Prime Minister of the largest democracy in the world. People reacted sharply, but a message went down the line that now you can make any statement completely irrational, completely unscientific, based on myths and superstition, and get away with it. People are likely to clap. What happens later? Later, the education minister, state minister for education, makes a comment that I do not believe in Darwinism because my ancestors have never seen monkeys getting transformed into Homo sapiens. Now, he claims to be a PhD in chemistry or MSc in chemistry, whatever it was. But he is education minister and making such a comment, so he can get away with it. Luckily, 3 academies of science reacted very sharply. The international community reacted very sharply, and he was removed. But so was Darwinism from 10th standard textbook. Now, one can give many examples of how political leadership was reacting after Prime Minister made this comment. Remember that Prime Minister's speech is prepared and goes through many filters. So it was not a naive comment. It was a political comment that he made against scientific temper. Remember that at least I am trying to argue that scientific temper is a political project. Therefore, it is necessary, as Professor Meera has just now pointed out, for a fascist regime to oppose scientific temper, and the comment that was made by a fascist prime minister. With the result, the judiciary falls in line and makes similar comments as part of their judgment. And judiciary, one of the judges says that peacock reprocreates by using tears of each other. Similarly, somebody says that Sita ji is evidence of test tube baby. She was the first test tube baby who was born in India in ancient period. Another chief minister says that we had internet during olden days. And if we had internet, we had satellite. If we had satellite, we had rockets. If we had, it goes on and on. I can give many examples. But okay, one can say that these are only politicians who are making such comments. What happens to the institutions of science? So the first attack, first assault under the leadership of Prime Minister comes from political formation. And they go on, and it intensifies as time passes. So this is what is happening at political level. In the institutions, whether you take universities, schools, colleges, one cannot even talk about them with reference to leadership. But we see that all kinds of things happen under the leadership of vice chancellors and even the directors of IITs. IITs, which uh, we are never tired of saying how great we are and what great institutions we have produced. Yet one of the directors says that he can talk to Atma and he can recall Atma. The other one says that all the problems are happening because of in a region are happening because of meat eating, etc., etc. So even the directors of IIT are making such comments. Okay, we can still say that if the time changes, the political leadership changes, things can go back to normal. One can reset the button. The directors and vice chancellors may align tomorrow with new political leadership who votes for scientific temper. Today, political leadership is voting against scientific temper, so things may change. What happens to the institutions at a very different level now? Department of Science and Technology and Department of Biotechnologies, these are the two major funding agencies as far as scientific research is concerned. Now, for the first time, Department of Science and Technology gives allocate funds separately for research on Panch Gavya. What is Panch Gavya? 5 products of cow: urine, cow dung, curd, milk, and ghee. So, where did these funds come from? These funds come from the 0.5% of GDP, which is allocated and given to these institutions, these two bodies. So, out of that 0.5%, which has not increased over period, pseudo-scientific research is being funded, which means that the allocation of funds, which was not sufficient for scientific research, already is squeezed. So many projects are closed. Many scientific projects are closed, and many teams who were working on scientific 2025. So this is another area where the assault is happening as we are talking. But how about closure of institutions? NCSTC, that is National Council for Science, Technology, Communication, is almost a defunct organization today. So there's no funding. Whereas funding is made available to 53 institutions to work on Panch Gavya. One of the universities where funds were given, crores of rupees were given, we see that particular project is under now scrutiny. They bought lots of cow dung and cow urine, and then they spend money on furniture and a fancy car. So this is how things are. And one of the universities also claims now that, cow dung can be used for the published paper by the same university which bought a Chinese robo and claimed that they have developed it. Anyway, they are claiming that cow dung can protect you uh, uh, from rays that emit during the atom bomb explosion. So all kinds of things are now happening. I consider them as an assault. But you can again say that tomorrow things may change. What will not change easily is that when pseudo-scientific research becomes part of the scientific institution, then the scientific culture is changed. These projects, whether it's Panchgavya or trying to find Sanjeevani Boti, or trying to find the mythical river, or trying to find impact of mantras on a patient, his recovery, being done in All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Here, the conclusion has already been given. And scientific investigation demands that it should be an open-ended research. So the culture of institutions doing research is being changed. And we have seen in many cases where this culture has started affecting scientific community, because wherever the money is, they will try to align themselves to do research and get the money for their projects. Now, this was third uh, uh, third kind of assault that is going on science in India today. But let me come to education sector. In India, there are about there were about 26.5 crore schools in 2022. The number has reduced to 24.8 crores, a reduction of about 2 crore schools. Now, can you imagine in some country where the number of schools is reducing? Can you even think of any country where the number of schools is reducing in 21st century? Uh, at least I can't imagine. But in India, it has happened. If it had happened that you kick out about 4 crore students, there is a reduction of about 4 crore students as far as total enrollment in schools is concerned. The government would have fallen, but it has not fallen. So at one level, you are reducing the number of students who can even join a school, because the number of schools is reducing, so they have no opportunity to join. Dropout rate was always a problem, but we could have improved probably dropout rate, or reduced the number of students who drop out of formal education. But we have reduced during this period, 2021 to 2024 and 25, by about 2 crore. Now, what has happened to curriculum? About 3 crore 80 lakh students appear in 10th class. From 10th class book, in the name of reducing the burden on students, Darwinism was removed, periodic table was removed, and Pythagorean theorem was removed. These 3 chapters were removed. So what is great about it? They are claiming that in 11th class we are teaching students Darwinism. We have not removed Darwinism. We have only reduced the burden in 10th class. Now, if you look at the data, then out of these, let's say that it's 4 crore or 3.8 crore students who pass out from 10th class. How many of them join science stream? It's only 40 lakh students who join science streams. That is what the data says. Data is silent about how many of them join uh, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and how many of them join biology. But let's divide it by 2. So 20 lakh students join the uh, stream where they will be exposed to Darwinism or periodic table or Pythagorean theorem. All kinds of theoretic states have a problem with Darwinism. We are not alone. Even Israel doesn't teach Darwinism. Though Pakistan has started teaching after 2006, when most of the countries joined the coalition to defend Darwinism and teach Darwinism in schools. India is one of them, and we have removed it from school education. So only out of 3.8 crore, only 20 lakh students will be exposed to Darwinism. What happens to rest of them? And what is the problem with periodic table? So I started thinking about it, that why periodic table? The only answer is most of the students are being prepared to follow Babas, which brings me to Baba phenomena that we have observed, which has its roots in 80s, but crystallized and matured. This is new Baba phenomena. Matured during 90s and then after the turn of the century. Now look at the Babas before I relate it to what is happening in education sector. There are, if we take only 10 top Babas, just take 10 top Babas, what is their asset worth? It is 2 lakh crore. The top 5 Babas are Acharya Balakrishnan, Asaram Bapu, Swami Nityanand, Baba Ramdev, and Ravi Shankar. All these have assets more than 1,000 crore. Now, what is the expenditure on total, the budget of total school education expenditure budget? This is 78 crore. Let's assume it is 80 crores. Then the asset of Babas, top 10 Babas, is 2 lakh crores, which means that 1 lakh 20 crores is left out, right? If we appropriate all the wealth that has been amassed there, then we can give free education to every child. And since there are 24 lakh students, if we divide this wealth, then all of them will get not only free education, but 5,000 rupees a year as a scholarship. But out of this, about 12 lakh, 15 lakh students are within the government schools. They are not in private schools. So if you give a scholarship to only government students studying in government schools, then it becomes about 10,000 rupees per student. These are rough calculations, and I don't know economics, so I will not go into details, and whether this is feasible or not is not the question that I am raising. I'm just raising the question that in a country where you have 24.5 lakh temples and religious places, you have only 15 lakh schools, all put together. both private and government schools. So where are we putting our two penny is the question that I'm asking. Obviously, these places which are called ashrams of Baba, I call them factories of superstition, factories of myths and superstitions. So we are giving priority as compared to education as a society, as a nation, priority to the centers of myths and superstitions instead of modern education, temples of modern educations. Now, this calculation was based only on 10 Babas. Remember that. This doesn't include the dargahs, the temples, which are very rich across the country, and many smaller ones. So, the money that is going to spread superstitions and myths is far larger as compared to what we are spending on education. Therefore, if you have to prepare students and teach them Darwinism and the table and Pythagorean theorem, then Babas and Prime Minister and others cannot claim that human beings are born out of here, 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 and here. Then you can't say that the entire cosmos and universe is built out of Panch Bhuta, which is being spread in ashrams of Baba. Then you can't say that Pythagorean theorem was discovered in ancient India. Therefore, it's necessary to push most of the students in a situation where they are not exposed to these ideas at all. And we have seen that the Babas have become so powerful, and at least half of them are rapists. Their ashrams have huge cache of arms and ammunition, which is completely illegal. But we see that right from IAS officers to politicians to managers of corporate sector, they are bhakts of these Babas, one or the other. So there is a market being created and being encouraged by which is catered to by these factories of superstitions. And the market is very layered. So there is a Baba whom you may call completely idiot, who says that buy 11 handkerchiefs and don't take me non-seriously. This is exactly what happened. That your problems are because you haven't bought handkerchief and distributed it for a long time. Buy 11 of them, keep one in your pocket and distribute 10. All your problems will be solved. There's another Baba who says that, you have not kept Coca-Cola in your fridge for a long time. Go and buy and keep it in the fridge. You have not kept money in your wallet for such a long time. Please do that, etc., etc. खीर खिलाना और मार देना तो था ही, वो बहुत मशहूर हुआ था। या लौकी का जूस पिलाना बहुत मशहूर हो गए थे। उसमें एक CSIR का आदमी मर गया लौकी का जूस पी पी के, बाबा रामदेव ने मार दिया उसको। So this is what is happening, right? But it's catering to only one section of society. There is a range of Babas who are catering to different sections. There is another Baba who is teaching you art of life. So that is completely a different segment of society which is being catered to. But are Babas only spreading anti-science? No. There is a now unholy nexus of these so-called holy Babas along with politicians and crony capital in the country. That has emerged after the turn of the century, and it has got cemented completely. So put together, all of them are trying to undermine scientific temper in the country. And let me also, in the end, point out that when Nehru was groomed and Gandhi and Azad were groomed by the best of the minds, where does this political leadership come from? Most of you who have lived in US for a long time may not have seen those clips where right from Albani to Murli Manohar Joshi to Vajpayee to the present Prime Minister, they've gone and touched feet of these Babas, one or Baba or the other, or maybe multiple Babas. Therefore, these people were groomed. This political leadership was groomed in the ashrams of Baba, and they have got benefited from that, and therefore it's natural for them to attack and repeatedly attack scientific temper. This fascist force has no problem, like any other fascist force, with technology. And therefore, Make in India becomes a major project. But we don't hear a word in favor of science from these illiterate, groomed in Baba's ashrams, politicians. This is what is happening in India, and the assault on scientific temper is multi-pronged. But they had said it. They had not kept it a secret. They came to do this, and we have allowed, as a nation, allowed them to do what they are doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gauhar Sahab. A very bleak picture, but we all know what's going on really. But it is so sad. From Nehruvian to Modian period, India dived back on the road, which we cannot just imagine. So let's hear more from Professor Meera, and then we will take some question answer. You have given us a lot of time, so I'm not going to leave you so easily. Go ahead, sir. Because you have equally capable other characteristics. So stay tuned. Meera ji.
Hanji. Yes. Am I okay? Yeah, the picture is grim, and you have given us a pretty interesting narrative of the the absolute explosive growth of pseudoscientific thinking, starting in 2014 with coming of Modi. There is a quality. You pointed out a very important qualitative difference in the public discourse before Modi and after Modi. Um, and most of the facts that you have laid out should really send a shudder down anybody, any thinking person's spine. Ki, kahan ja raha hai ye desh? So I fully, I am grateful to you for laying it out so well. But I want to kind of thicken the plot a little bit. Um, the break, I fully agree with you with the proposition that there was a quantum jump in pseudoscientific thinking, the Babas, the coming of the nexus between Babas and the crony capitalists and the politicians. Qualitative, quantity, in quantity, there was an explosion. But I want to kind of uh, suggest to you that this phenomena that we are watching, the pseudoscientific thinking and the Babas and all, um, the roots of all these issues, the roots on the assault on scientific thinking, go back to the freedom movement itself. Uh, I want to raise three concrete issues of where the problems lie. First is limitations of Nehru himself. You the quotation, the definition of scientific temper that Nehru offers uh, in Discovery of India. I also quote him, exact same words I have quoted, and they're very impressive, very, very clear, crystal clear idea of what thinking scientifically and critically is all about. But uh, two things. Nehru cannot be, just because he wrote beautifully, poetically, clearly, evocatively, it cannot be turned into a sort of a great rationalist, a great slayer of superstitions. I just don't buy. I don't want to. The kind of credit that goes to Nehru um, is misplaced. Why? Nehru had serious limitations. Uh, the one thing that stands out and is the complete neglect of primary education, of good quality schools. In order for scientific temper to move from just these policy statements and legislative pronouncements, and Nehru was good at inaugurating so many institutions. He would cut ribbons and talk, and at that time, maybe judiciary and legislative bodies, they fell in line with the rhetoric of scientific temper. But for the idea of science and critical thought to take hold in Indian society, what was needed was at least preparing the ground. How can you expect people who were not, the rate of illiteracy in India remained very high. India is one modernizing country in which right to education was accepted only, signed into law, what, 2008 or 9? I mean, and Nehru, I understand the limitations. We were uh, we were poor, and we had huge challenges. We had to set up basic industry, and Nehru did the best he could. But the limitations were complete neglect of primary education, good quality secular schools. They were not created. The money that went into IITs uh, was, was just enormous, while the school sector was, there is data to show that the neglect of education, actually, not just Nehru, Gandhi. I hold Gandhi responsible for creating. He is very clear. Uski education की philosophy was very clear कि vocational training दो बच्चों को. Why do they need to learn to read and write? So there was this sort of a, I don't know what to call it, a Brahminical elitism, that mass education was absent. If you are trying to create a democracy and you want to have enlightened populace, you cannot ignore primary schools, and the field was just left open to all kind of religious organizations. RSS took on. RSS, the biggest education sector now. Christians had the convent school, Muslims had the madrasas. The vacuum was filled with religious schools, which government funded, because the constitution allows the government funds to go to religious schools. So my point is that is also the legacy of Nehru. And my contention is, for scientific temper to become a live force in society, you need certain sociological conditions to be put in place. You can't expect illiterate people who are struggling to keep the body and soul together to be, not to go for babas. I mean, if the more anxiety you have about your existence, it's well established through research that societies in which most people, majority, or large proportions of people don't know if they fall ill, will they be able to go to a doctor? Like in America, that is where religions thrive, because of religions provide certain abstract security. So secularization, the spread of critical thought, is dependent upon requires certain social conditions, which which we did not create in the early years after our independence. The attempt wasn't there. That is, to me, that is a big black mark against Nehru. Just talking about it is not going to make it happen. And the limits of it, uh, even Nehru's own daughter. I mean, look at how limited the idea of Nehru scientific temper was. Indira Gandhi was the biggest. He provided patronage to well-known Babas. She was so damn superstitious that, I mean, I forget the names of these, but she was into tantric rituals. So the point is, it was, if he could not even after Nehru, the next generation was much before BJP came to power. The idea was dead. Uh, Secondly, the issue of the freedom movement. Yes, India's freedom movement was led by well-known intellectuals who were cosmopolitan in their thinking, in the sense that they were they were well educated. They were in touch with intellectuals from not just Asia, China, Japan, and other countries. I mean, remember Rabindranath Tagore's various journeys to Japan and China, and Subhash Chandra Bose's stay in Europe. M.N. Roy lived in Europe. They were well connected. They were in touch with revolutionaries, scientists. All of that, I absolutely is an established fact. But there is another side to it. Indian nationalism uh, was premised upon uh, India's spiritual superiority over the West. That is also part of our freedom movement. I mean, do not forget the influence people like Vivekanand, like Aurobindo, like Gandhi had on the freedom movement. And what was their idea of India as a nation? How did they see India and its future? The recovery of its spiritual greatness. The Vishwa Guru idea is not Modi's. It started long time ago with the same freedom movement that we celebrate as our liberators and the founders of modern India. But the idea was that India's essence lies in its spirituality. I mean, the books and books. Vivekanand was a pagambar of this idea, as was Aurobindo, and and so this business of incorporating modern science into Vedas started way before BJP was even born. अब इसकी रूट्स आप देख सकते हैं. अब ये जो सतपाल सिंह था, the anti-Darwinist minister of education, where was he getting this fancy idea that oh, I haven't seen a man turn into a monkey, so therefore Darwin is false. This is Dayanand Saraswati. He was a committed Arya Samaji, this Satyapal. He is still perhaps the vice chancellor of Gurukul Kangri, which is a Arya Samaji. And my point is, Congress party, after freedom, after those crucial years when India could have taken a different turn, uh, 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 could have laid the foundations of a decent, thriving, critically minded society. In those crucial years, Congress was full of Hindu conservatives. Madan Mohan Malviya, H.M. Munshi. They had roots, they had long associations with Hindu Mahasabha, with Arya Samaj, Lajpat Rai ko dekhiye aap. So these ideas that we are now witnessing, they have a long pedigree, and we celebrate the founders of pseudoscience as great nationalists. I include Vivekanand and Aurobindo as and the third guy, or Arya Samaj. And Arya Samaj's influence is Ramdev and all are all Arya Samaji, and the ideas were the idea that the Vedas contain all known truths, and nothing that we can find out by modern methods can ever contradict what the Vedas teach us. So these ideas were put in place by the end of 19th century, and they've never gone away. Now we have a party which just thrives on them. They are bringing them all back. I think that Nehru was an anomaly. Nehru, the default position of Indian nationalism was what the BJP is today promoting. Nehru's period was a little bit of a aberration, which went away after Nehru's death, and it declined even with Indira Gandhi. We know what Indira Gandhi did with India's democracy. So that's my second point. The third point, I want to complicate the story that you have told us, is why is it that science, the critical thought, science goes on in India to the extent that it goes on inside the laboratories, but the critical method of science, of not accepting anything unless it's backed by proper evidence and logic, that method, why did it not take root in India? And I hold the Indian scientific community and Indian social scientists and historians responsible for the fact that we are left with what we have. Indian scientists, after all, as you said, and it's so important to point out, that's very important, that when Modi made that statement about Ganesh, he was talking in a hospital, as far as I remember, full of medical doctors and well-educated people, and they clapped. Why did they clap? Because they did not see, because they have always kept their science separate from their belief. साइंस तो लैब में आके करेंगे, बाहर जाके कुछ भी, वो बाबा के भी पैर छुएंगे, पता नहीं कितने लाल धागे बांधे होते हैं अपनी कलाई पे, सारे रिचुअल्स करेंगे. ये कंपार्टमेंटलाइजेशन हैज बीन द डेथ ऑफ rationalism in India. Well-educated people, I mean, people like us, middle classes, you find that compartmentalization so severe and so embedded that they don't even think twice about contradiction. They don't see the contradiction in what they know from science and what they believe. And I think people like Gauharji and myself and some others, we are, I think, by nature predisposed to not living with contradictions. So, our beliefs have to be sifted through facts. So, Indian scientists themselves have lacked the spirit of science in their lives. And on top of it, social scientists and historians, starting from 1980s onward, and as I have been crying about it for many years, they were the biggest critics of scientific temper and secularism. Our intellectuals have failed us. Intellectuals failed the project of bringing science to the people. Science became the enemy of the people. सेक्युलरिज्म पे सबसे ज्यादा अटैक हमारे सोशल साइंटिस्ट ने किया था कि ये तो क्रिश्चियनिटी की देन है. इंडियंस थिंक डिफरेंटली. Our standards of rationality are different, and so modern secularism and the materialism, Western science is supposed to be just materialistic, while we combine spirituality and science. Our way of doing science is different. So there's a whole, tradition of this kind of thinking in India, which is still. I was in India only. I came back from India only in December. No, sorry. When did I come back? I came back in February, mid-February. I was in India for 3 months, and I attended a couple of seminars which were um, uh, which were science, technology, and society kind of seminars in these newfangled universities. Kya O.P. Jindal play? Yeah. So first they wouldn't let me come in for the rest of the, because my name was creating problems. But I attended an inaugural session of a conference on STS, and the same old the idea that modern science is somehow is oppressive to the ordinary person on the streets. It is creating an epistemic violence. That idea is well and kicking even now. I mean, pseudoscience is not on their mental screens. It is science itself which needs to be brought into. We have to do science in a manner that is in sort of in sympathy with Indian ways of thinking. So I think our intellectuals have a lot to answer for. Third, one final point I would like to make is it's curious. The assault on science in the two countries that I know are equally, under science is under assault in both the countries. One wonders, what is it that is motivating? Assault on science in America is all, it's all around us. Within a month of Trump's taking power, I mean, the funding cuts, the demands on getting rid of DEI and gender issues were absolutely, they just proliferated, and funds were cut, research grants were stopped. I hear in America, from what I can make out, what is motivating the right wing is to, what they think as including people like us, colored people, women, the third gender. All of it's an attack on DEI primarily. And of course, when it comes to NIH cuts and all, the conspiracy theorists have won. The suspicion of the government is such that vaccines, are thrown out of the window, and the assault on facts is what's going to happen now about the Save America Act. There is fraud. Show me evidence. We go to war without evidence. So it is rampant. but it's not taken the form of encouraging. Well, there is some pseudoscience in the medical field, very very dangerous pseudoscience, but the primary motivation seems to be, what they to curb what they see as political correctness, wokeness. But in India, it is ultra nationalistic. The motivation is to establish our credentials as the Vishwaguru, people who had, who were the first ones to have discovered. It's to sort of bring greatness of Hindus, the old freedom movement's agenda, that India's essence is its spirituality, and then to claim India's spirituality is rational. India's spirituality contains science, and we can do science in a way which is less reductionist, more holistic, and things like that. So, but yeah, the assault is, in my opinion, the roots, the attack on science in India is more tied to India's nationalism, Hindu nationalism, to claim superiority of the Indian and Aryan civilization. These ideas are extremely dangerous. And I think in America, there is a hope that with the new administration, once we get rid of what we have, we can recover. In India, I don't know. I think the problems, they have, anti-science has a long, historically very deep root in India. I mean, after all, Charvaks, Charvaks are just a note, historical footnote to Indian history of philosophy. The idealism has always won over rationalism in India. So, and now it is all politicized and tied to Indian glory. So, yeah, I feel more worried about India than I do about America, even though what's happening in America is utterly dispiriting and frightening. America can do so much harm to the rest of the world. India can only, it's Indian rhetoric is, we are not big players, thankfully, but we aspire to be big players, and the attack on modern sciences so that Vedas can shine. That is the project. And so, but yeah, so I'll end here. But thank you so much for this, bringing it all together in a very enlightening uh, talk. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, Miraji. Thank you. You put a further on the same line some more thoughtful things for our audience. I hope that there are many questions. Before that, we go for the announcement, Rafat.
Yep.
Yeah, and then we will go for question and answer session. Put the poster and
Okay, the first one.
yeah,
No.
no session poster and then.
Okay.
So because most likely Saturday there is a major festival, Eid, coming. A lot of audience we have from the community, and Friday is here, so we will be unable to do a session on coming Saturday. So that's one poster. And next, after that session, we resume our sessions with with Danish Iqbal, who is a regular presence here. So he is going to present the poetry of Dr. Khalil Rahman Azmi, considered as one of the leading modernist poet of Urdu literature in recent time. And he's going to focus on Dashte Be Nawai Mein Awaz Khalil. And he will be joined by four other artists. And so over to that. And now I give this place to Dr. Rafat Hussain for moderating the question and answer session. Rafat.
Thank you, Dr. Raziuddin. So let's begin the question and answer session. And there are two options of asking question. One is to raise a digital hand, or you can put your comment or the question in the chat box. So thank you so much. And before we begin, I'd like to thank both of the speakers, Dr. Gauhar Raza and Professor Meerananda. And of course, it was a very interesting session. So now I am checking if there is anything in the chat box. There is no question so far. Let me see. Okay, so let me begin with the raised hand. Dr. Amir, please.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the two speakers, Professor Gauhar Raza and Professor Nanda, for a very eloquent talk, enlightening. What Professor Nanda mentioned, and as we all know, in this country, on this side of the Western world, we are going through the similar situation. We have a Secretary of Health and Human Services who doesn't believe in the immunological sciences, and the progress spread over 1.5 century is not considered valid. As a result, he discourages, and other people like him, and immunization. And we see the spread of measles after it has been eradicated in this country, and other childhood diseases. And I wish I could share the optimism that situation will go back to normal after the current administration, if ever comes to an end more. There are true believers who will keep this thinking alive even afterwards, followers of this philosophy. Coming back to India, and a lot of talk is focused on that. What I am wonder, why was the progress of science was not as impressive in India, even before the modern India after independence. In the Mughal Empire, for example, I recall that India was the richest country in the days of Jahangir and Shah Jahan in the world, and they had ambassadors from Europe, as we know, Bernier and Hawkins and Thomas Rowe, and they brought some of the knowledge. And so it wasn't completely that we didn't know that the medical science was alive and started somewhere else, but no university or college was ever started in India. Jahangir, as we know, was very much interested in natural sciences, and many say that he was really born a scientist. He studied many things in his own book, Tuzak Jahangiri, and so he essentially was a scientist, but it didn't occur to him or others, even who follows him, to start a university and start scientific knowledge and teaching. So I don't see any easy answer for that. And one of the things I'd see in India when I was growing up there a long time ago, that prestige doesn't belong so much to scientists. It goes to Indian Administrative Service, IS officers, and provincial civil service, and all of that. But even eminent scientists don't enjoy that kind of prestige or power or recognition as the administrative service people do. So I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is a million-dollar question. Why Indian science, despite its early promise, very early promise, did not take off the way
Yes, very
it happened in
closely linked to the question why it happened in
the
Europe.
West.
Why didn't it happen in China or Arab world? So this question, a lot of historians of science have tried to grapple with, we don't have any answer, any firm answer on which everybody agrees. Short, crisp, one line or one paragraph answer cannot be given to this. There are many reasons why this did not happen, despite the fact that China and India were producing about half of the world's wealth during that period. That is claimed. I don't know, but they were wealthy nations. Yet it did not happen. They had a tradition of scientific research, technological development, but it did not happen. So there are many reasons. As far as Professor Meerananda's, he very eloquently added many dimensions to this whole debate, and she has been working, so it was very good. What I'm proposing here is that this was not a revolutionary political leadership which was at the helm of affairs as far as freedom movement was concerned and after India got independence. So when we talk about the relationship between revolutionary thoughts and centrist thoughts and reactionary thoughts, then probably many more things have to be said. I'm comparing that period with this period, trying to compare it. And I'm also aware of the fact, while discussing scientific temper, that what has happened to our neighbors. So what happened there? In my opinion, the only thing that did not happen to most of the societies which are surrounding us in many countries, that they never had a discussion, even discussion among elites, on scientific temper and building a base for doing scientific research.
Here I disagree with you, Gauhar. Why? Because just compare China with India. The May 4th movement,
Except for China. I was coming to.
Right. Wasn't just discussed, it was brought into the public square. The critique of see, I think in the West also, science progresses in conflict with religion. It's because religion has always provided big answers, meta narratives to the questions of our origins. Where do we come? How does the world work? So in the West, gradually,
some of these issues in the book.
No, I would love to. I'm going to order that book. My point is, in China, Confucianism came under fire when Chinese intellectuals began to wonder, why is it that the West is colonizing us? They pointed the finger to their inherited beliefs. Confucianism was attacked viciously. In India, the opposite happened. The freedom movement's ideology was इंडिया गुलाम बना है क्योंकि हम अपना धर्म भूल गए हैं, उसको रिकवर करना है. उस चक्कर में religious thought was never put to question, and unless there is
to work on science communication in China, and I edited the book. Yeah. So if you compare China before the turn of the century and after the turn of the century with India, all kinds of clashes of ideas are taking place, and there are parallels of what was happening in India and what was happening there. The Cultural Revolution was again a turning point, and it gave birth to a lot of very reactionary ideas, including almost a parallel of Baba phenomena in China. It is only after the turn of the century they realized it in 1990s and started taking corrective measures in China. And passed a law, any idea that is not ratified by the scientific community cannot be propagated in China. Then they were spending about 0.5% of GDP like us till 2000.
Mm-hmm.
By 2005, they were spending about 1.5% of the GDP. They tripled. Now
On
it is
R&D? On what?
on scientific research.
Acha.
We were spending 0.5%, they were spending 0.5%. By 2005, they tripled, right? Now they are spending much more as percentage of GDP. I don't have that data right away with me. But what happens in China is, remember that this is the period when they were growing at a much faster rate.
Right.
So the 1.5% was huge amount.
Huge.
It was a huge jump because there was exponential increase there. But remember, the clash of ideas were taking place in India. The clash of ideas were taking place in almost all countries which we know of today as countries. They were cultures, probably. The point that I'm trying to make is that in India also we had a clash of ideas. The turning point 2014 is that the ideas of progress have almost lost as far as political leadership is concerned. There was a segment of political leadership within Congress who were fence-sitters, there were radicals, and there were reactionaries, probably in much bigger number, as you have pointed out, and took name of many people. But there were people who were trying to propagate ideas of equality, anti-caste ideas, equality of gender. These were not the ideas of dominant philosophy in India.
Right.
You are absolutely right that those ideas are very, very old ideas. They have root in almost ancient period. The idea of caste.
Would you consider the ideas in Enlightenment in Europe or Renaissance benefited them a lot, and India and for a time China was not affected by these movements such as Enlightenments and conservative ideas? India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, I mean, I count South Asia, it was detrimental for them that they were not exposed to it.
I might have something to add here. They were familiar with all the major Enlightenment thinkers. I mean, if you look at what were the intellectuals reading, I mean, they Locke, Hume, utilitarians, especially what's his name, Mill, of course, but the younger Mill and Bentham. Bentham was a very important. So Indian intellectuals were very familiar. If you look at what Vivekananda read in his college, or Auguste Comte's positivism was a major ideological force in Bengal in the 19th century. What they did with these ideas is the problem. There is a tendency amongst, it's one of our cultural thought processes, cultural tradition, to just include everything into the Vedas, the Vedic, the spiritual. So so utilitarianism, for example, the greatest good for greatest number of people, right? That's the principle of utility. That was turned into our traditional arrangements of caste actually does provide greatest happiness for greatest number, and they downgraded the individualism that the Enlightenment thinkers were talking about. They totally downgraded individualism. Competition, which was part of liberal thought, was turned into some kind of Western demonic ideas, Western ills that India needs to protect itself from. So we very selectively absorbed ideas and fitted them into the tradition. And that tradition, the only people who were Ambedkar, Periyar, the people who are suffering at they are the ones, but they did not have any power. Ambedkar was condemned by both the right and the left, and so those who were at the forefronts were absolutely wedded to the ancient Hindu tradition and fitted all liberal ideas into that.
Thank you.
Difference in China.
We have spent so much pretty good.
Let me just finish this thought.
Please.
The difference in China is that the original ancient inherited tradition itself came under examination. That never happened in India. So we had debates, yes, but not at the fundamental level. We never questioned the Vedanta, Vedantic holism.
Dr. Raza, do you wanted to add something, or let's move on? Gauhar Saab, do you want to add
I just
something?
wanted to narrate something, a personal experience in China.
Please.
This was an international conference where their education minister had come. It was on science communication, and we were talking, and like an idiot Indian, I started conversation by saying that, yeah, we have continuous civilization, 5,000 years, and you have
Right.
this, that, etc. And I went on and on. And through interpreter, he was listening to what I was trying to say and chit-chat about. He responded by saying, yes, granted that we were great in the past, what are we today?
Right.
And that is the difference between India of today and China of today.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I see that there are a couple of scientists, famous scientists, intellectuals are in attendance. Can I request Ambassador Ishrat Aziz Saab, Hashma Hassan, or M.A. Kalam Saab for an expert comment? Let's begin with Ishrat Bhai. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
I was taking a walk and listening very carefully to the talk, and in fact, I was making some comments when you got me. So my comments, I suppose I will complete them later. It's a very interesting subject. One point I want to make, and we must keep this in mind. We don't need scientific thinking in physical sciences or technology, because if you indulge in unscientific thinking, dogmatism in physical sciences, you will soon be exposed. Your inventions will get you nowhere if they are based on dogmatism and not on scientific thinking.
Right.
Where scientific thinking is required is something more basic. It is our daily life. It is our human affairs, what I call politics, economics, what else? Ethics. These are the subjects where scientific thinking is required, not in science. Science can take care of itself. And if you try to do something wrong to science, the science will get back at you. But in human affairs, you can propound any dogma, any nonsense. And how do you disprove? In human affairs, how do I disprove anything? Like in ethics, how do I prove or disprove anything? In politics, how do I prove? In political theory, how do I prove or disprove anything? How do I prove and disprove in economic theory? I mean, look, people study economics all their life and they make such silly mistakes. People, and as a diplomat, I would say, people study diplomacy all their life, but they cannot take a correct diplomatic decision. And I keep saying constantly that it's a pity that exhaustion between parties has more often brought peace than diplomatic initiatives. So, what I want to make, the point I'm making is very simple. We need scientific thinking more than this so-called science. I mean, there are scientists, very well-known scientists, but they leave their science in laboratory, and when they come out, they are no better. Sometimes they are worse than others. So I entirely agree with what was said by Nanda about, I mean, right from the time I said, I thank you very much for your very bold and iconoclastic presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Azib bhai. Hashma Appa, are you there?
Yeah,
Please.
just a couple of things. In support of what Dr. Nanda said, when I was in BSc in Lucknow University in 1966, our physics books, almost every chapter had a footnote saying how this idea had already been around in ancient India. And so it's, as Dr. Nanda says, it's not something which the Modi government has brought. It has been around, at least when I was a student in 1966 at Lucknow University. And of course, at that time, we used to all laugh and say, okay, yeah, it was there, but where are we now? And that's the question which Dr. Gauhar Raza just said, that's what the Chinese is asking. But as students, we did ask that question. Yes, we invented the zero, but we are still stuck at zero. So it's good that we invented all this, but we haven't gone beyond it. So as I said, as students, we certainly question it at that time, and I hope students will question it in these times too. So thank you.
Thank you, Hashma Appa. Let's see if Kalam Saab is there. M.A. Kalam, please.
Yeah, Shukriya. Thank you very much. I have a couple of points. One, of course, is the fact that primary education, as Professor Nanda has emphasized on that, has been neglected very badly, not only in the past, it's happening even today. And that's where I think the problem comes in. But then combined with that, I would also add one more thing which happens. I think somehow or the other we haven't dealt with that, but I feel it's also crucial, and that is primary health. They go together.
Absolutely.
And when we look at the work of Amartya Sen, for instance, and his associates, they talk about two things. We are talking about development of a place. We need to look at primary health as well as primary education. And India has not provided a level playing field in many places, and particularly in the rural areas and even in the cities, for instance, the so-called corporation schools and the others which are there, they're abysmally bad. And that's where I think it's not just that it has happened in the past. Even today, the fact that primary education is not being importance, and that also has a lot to do with the kind of socialization process which happens in the families. So unless primary education and primary health go together to some extent, I think the kind of development we are thinking about is not possible even the next 20, 30 years. I think these two things, I think, are very, very crucial. And unfortunately, what happens is that except for the state like Kerala, I've just come back from there after giving an endowment talk. The kind of importance which is given to health and primary education, which has happened for a very long time in Kerala. I think the other states have to emulate. Tamil Nadu is doing well to some extent. But then if we look at certain other places in India, and I'm sorry to say this, it looks like two different countries. If you go to the north, and particularly the east, and then compare what's happening there, even for primary education, the kind of schools we have, I think the moment we give equal importance as we do to certain places in the cities and appoint good teachers, That's not going to happen, and it's a kind of a vicious circle. The kind of salaries which are given at the school level for teachers is so bad that many of them, even if they go there just to mark the attendance. And one of the things which has happened in the southern states, to some extent, it has helped, has been the midday meal and the and sometimes the breakfast which is given, which has at least ensured that the numbers at least are higher there, and it's a kind of an effect which may happen after a period. But I think unless level playing field is provided both in the urban areas, semi-urban areas, and the rural areas where the state has a very big role to play, the IIMs, the IITs, the AIMs will take care of themselves. What we need to do is to what extent we're going to emphasize on the look at the budgeting which is done. Is that something I think it is also very, very disturbing, the kind of thing which happens. And Nehru, of course, started all these IITs with the help from Germany on one side, Russia on the other side, and other things which he did. To some extent, he was all right. But then I think we can't go back and talk about it now. What is necessary is that even today, we need to do something whereby some effort, the state seems to have abdicated its responsibility when it comes to primary education and primary health. And a simple thing like providing drinking water 24 hours a day, 70 to 80% of the communicable diseases can be brought down. Just one single thing: can we provide potable water 24 hours a day? And that has an effect on primary education too. And like I said, I think those of you, some of the people who are not familiar with the work of Amartya Sen and his associates, and one of them, Jean Drèze, who has been working in India for a long time after having taken up Indian citizenship. I think their work is something I think we need to follow, setting if we have to give real importance to primary health and primary education. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kalam Saab. Thank you so much for your comment. I was about to ask Dr. Jabbar, and he raised his hand. So
I was instructed to do that.
so that I would have the same.
Thank you. It's a wonderful discussion. I think it's kind of dear to my heart in terms of, because I posted a lot of articles on that in the chat box. In spite of all these problems that India appears to be having in terms of living up to the constitutional requirements of scientific temper, it still is the fourth largest economy in the world. So I think you have to remember that too. So how did it get there with that kind of? So I want to get some answers from both of you. So how the economy is not a predicate? It's a different thing, but it's still it really gives you a flavor of a nation's progress, science and technology and development, right? So I want to have some discussion on that, some clarification on that.
Gauharji?
The size is so big that we would have anyway become fourth economy over a period of time. But yeah, there have been remarkable things that we cannot forget. One is the GDP increase during UPA 1 and UPA 2. Despite our critique of what happened during that period and what direction we wanted the economy and science and education, etc., there were achievements during that period. The other thing that I've been repeatedly pointing out is that during the previous regimes, one, that diversity, India is extremely diverse in every sense. So you have an island like Kerala, where you saw scientific movement, large-scale scientific movement and eradication of illiteracy. Whereas you have UP and Bihar and Odisha and these places where even now the situation is pathetic. So coming back to your question, same is the case with economy of the country. There are states which have done remarkably well, where the level of literacy and scientific understanding and also the technological development that has taken place is far better than other dark areas in the country. And the thing is that, today the political leadership is reaping those seeds which were spread at that time. Remember that, we have a solid critique of bourgeois leadership that took reins of India after independence. Yet there were achievements like India, when it got freedom, was producing 10% of most of the things that we can imagine. And by 80s, it was producing 90% and only 10% was being imported. That reversal took place in India, which did not happen in other countries other than China. China is a different case. One can discuss separately. But it did not happen in Sri Lanka. It did not happen in Myanmar. It did not happen in Pakistan. It did not happen in Nepal. It did not happen in any of the Arab countries. So, yes, you are absolutely right. But despite the fascist state, fascists who have grabbed the power in the country, we will keep on developing, probably, economically. But remember that what decisions we took after independence, that paid off after 30 years, 40 years. And the damage that is being done today will be felt probably after 30, 40 years. Maybe sooner. Maybe much sooner. The damage we realize, but the Indian population, general people, do not realize that this damage is being done to science and scientific temper in the country. And on the basis of only technological development, you cannot survive in this world. That's my position. I think Professor Meera also has been arguing that.
Yeah, I agree with you. No, I give credit to the first government for laying the foundations on which we could, that is something one can't scoff at. My problem is that the technological progress that is happening in India is not really, it's mostly borrowed technology. There aren't any real innovations that maybe UPI and telecommunication, I think, has to be, India has made tremendous jump. That I grant. But this rush for AI, must we, when data centers and all, can we even afford it? There's a certain herd mentality that, and the jobless growth, that bothers me a lot. We might be 3, 4, third, fourth economy, but as you said, our population is so large. Even with per capita GDP is 2,000 something per capita, but we are 1 billion strong, so it adds up. But my worry is that disconnect and crony capitalism, the leaps that are happening are through close connections between Modi and Adani and various such corporations. So it is distorting the political atmosphere. So no, I mean, Baba's Modi and crony capitalists together.
Difference lies in the culture today.
Hmm.
The Modi government and RSS have been able to successfully change the culture in the country.
Yeah.
Today, Meera and I cannot freely go and deliver a lecture. It will get likely blocked by somebody or the other. It could be from directly from Prime Minister's office,
Right.
or it could be a local VC who can block it today.
Right.
We could organize with government funding, and most of the organizations were left-oriented organizations, a Jan Vigyan Jatha.
Hmm.
We led, and it was led by leftists only, the literacy movement in the country. Today, we can't even think of that happening. There is a radical change, a major jump that has come, and we must focus on that. I am very worried about this Baba phenomena, because this Baba phenomena is going to crystallize fascism in the country.
Hmm.
It will be used to crystallize it,
So I
because this phenomena has not been studied by the left. We have not studied it. Our intellectuals have not studied it deeply. We reject it. But it's so deeply today rooted, and it's so aggressive, that this new phenomena is pushing those who were respected religious leaders, including Shankaracharyas, to the corner.
I know.
We don't realize that.
So,
Now,
Gauhar,
yeah,
thank you. Thank you. So I have a question on that one. I have been listening this Baba phenomenon and of course observing for a long time. So India is a religious country, and unfortunately superstitions come with that. And Meera ji and you are talking about Baba. And of course it has always been there. So my question is, okay, the good scientists, they work in the lab, and if they are going to touch a Baba's feet, and that has been the case forever, so can we coexist? We can have a good science, and of course, their personal belief should be kept kind of separate. And it has been, because dimension in India is not going to change. It has always been like that. As you said, Indira Gandhi used to do that. She believes in tantric, and a lot of even the good scientists do that. And I can say, even in America, there are people very religious. I won't say they are superstitious, but they keep two things separate.
I mean, what you're describing is the reality. Of course, it can be done because we see it being done. The only question uh, is it healthy? And with this kind of community, should we is even the spread of scientific reason possible at all if the scientists themselves don't see contradictions? And thirdly, with the community like that, will pseudoscience be ever challenged? Are we then fated to go down this route? Is that our fate? Then we just turn around and accept it.
Yeah,
कि
but
3.5% of their budget is going to Panch Gavya. ये problems है ना. I agree that that is the dominant tendency, but to me that is, that is a big problem. I mean, scientists need to think before. All the science tells them that the phenomena that the miracles that they are celebrating cannot physically happen. They are impossible. Yet they would keep quiet or participate. To me, that is a problem. They need scientific community needs a dose of scientific temper.
yeah, but that's a good point, and we have to work within whatever is the practice, because it's very difficult to change the practice in India. So anyway, before I hand over, but I want to invite one more person Ishrat Fatima. She has an interesting comment, and then I will hand over to Dr. Raziuddin, and he will, of course, elaborate on my point of view. Okay, Ishrat Fatima, please. Ishrat Fatima, if you are there, because let me see. Otherwise,
Ishrat Aziz has raised her hand.
oh, okay. Let's see again. Ishrat Bhai, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a fascinating subject for me, really. I want to make just one or 2 points. One is about, having scientific temper when you are in the laboratory, and then when you go out, you touch feet. And well, you cannot have dichotomy. You cannot have scientific temper in physical sciences and then behave very unscientifically when it comes to human affairs, because one thing, you will make a mess of human affairs which will destroy everything. The point is, when I was reading a book, Imam Ghazali, interestingly, he said you can, in physical sciences, you can follow reason, but in religion, you cannot follow reason. But what happens is, when you say this, the irrational approach overwhelms the rational approach. You cannot have rational approach in one segment of life and irrational in another. And one point I want to make about scientific temper, for example, that has come about in China, though its earlier civilization was quite different. I think if you look at Kerala, if you look at Bengal, you find more of scientific temper, because Marx, with whom I disagree on so many things, at least he said that we must follow a scientific approach in understanding history. And I think that is deeply embedded wherever Marxism has gone. And let me make the disclaimer, I disagree with Marx on so many things, his economic theory and how to achieve economic prosperity. But insofar as he emphasized scientific temper, I agree with him. And I think he has done a great service there. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Ishrat Bhai.
I agree more.
Okay. Last call for Ishrat Fatima, please.
Can I just add something here?
Yeah,
In
please, go
Kerala, I don't know about West Bengal is in a bad shape, but Kerala, I think it's not so much Marxism's support of scientific temper. It is a more socially just, the Kerala has managed to create, lay the foundations for education and health, and that is what creates promotes secular thought, because you don't need babas if you have hospitals. You may still have religious beliefs. I'm not saying that a welfare state everyone will turn atheistic, but if there is a welfare state of whatever kind we have in Kerala, people have alternatives to access. The Baba phenomena probably is not that widespread in progressive states as it is in Bihar or Uttar Pradesh or Punjab, for that matters. That's in India we have very little sociological analysis of good anthropological studies of why people go to Babas, and so or levels of secularization. We don't do that kind of empirical social studies in India.
I
Which is
think
a
as an
pity.
anthropologist, I would just like to add a small kind of a thing. Yeah, some studies have been done on that, but one of the things which happens is that when things are working properly, say for instance, if the trains are coming on time, the buses are there, the roads are good, the dependence on the babas and the other things also comes down. Therefore, I think a welfare state has to invest in certain kind of infrastructure that in itself, to some extent, will take care of refraining from going to the Babas. So
Right.
this is one of the things which happens, and I'm quite familiar with two states at least, Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Mhm.
So the dependence on the Babas, as you find in the north, for instance, that's why I was saying that sometimes you feel that you are in two different countries when you
Right.
travel from the southern states to Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. I'm sorry to name these states, but then it's true. So infrastructure development, the welfare state taking care of certain responsibilities to some extent reduces the dependence on Babas. Kerala is a fantastic example of that. And the work of Jean Drèze and Amartya Sen will also answer some of these things.
Right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kalam Saab. So
Shukriya.
thank you once again. So that we are already on the top of the hour, and that concludes the question and answer session. Once again, thank you both, and let's hand over to Dr. Raziuddin for final comment and of course a question.
Well, I will, I will just what Rafat just before the moderator Rafat Hussain was actually asking was that if you do good science, you are quite rationalist, and just like because he's living here in America since almost 40 years. I'm here since more than him. And what he has observed actually, or what I'm also observing every day, I'm at NIH, fantastic scientist, very rationalist, never talk religion in the corridors or while in the lunchroom, never ever. And rarely politics also. They all talk about science or games, whatever. But most of them are not atheist. They do go to church. And NIH is flooded with Jews. Jews are no less than Muslims in their practices. They are very rationalist. You will never find any time any talk of religion while in the building. They might be talking in their homes. The difference, however, is here, as we say, that perhaps this society is so now rationalist or highly educated, or because highly educated, it has become rationalist or scientific, that their personal belief remains very much strictly compartmentalized into their personal self, and it doesn't go into the science. They very well argue with the theory of evolution and all those based on science. Never bring Bible or Old Testament in their argument. The difference here is in India, you you have mixed this both because there was no serious attempt to really create that surrounding where a scientist is really scientist all the time, and some part of that person is a believer person. He could be atheist, non-believer, he could be less believer, but sometimes he will go to temple or a mosque. But overall, but he's that India is the Indians have not put it. The second thing is there is no critical thinking development in India. You see, they are loaded with textbooks. They come here, even PhDs, when they come here, they are unable to critically evaluate, put down a project on their own. PhD with some paper on in their hand, when they come here in the American labs from India, I'm not talking about elsewhere, India, because they were always like their supervisor at every stage, a teacher or a father or an uncle or a supervisor. They feed it. They write this, say this. You're not supposed to think independently. You cannot question much. So this critical thinking part is totally missing. Here, from the very childhood, they push the boy or the girl to go and think. So they have been created like that. I ask some of the, I still have contacts in the Indian institutions and all those, and I ask the top of them who have gone back from NIH and in the big position, professors, directors. I'm very senior in age, so they're all either retired or very senior position directors. And I asked them, we are 1.4 billion and claim the highest number of university graduates in the entire world. Probably now China is taking over. Name me one, two, three, even on fingertips. Name me in 1400 million people with the largest pool of graduates. Name me only 1 to 3% whose labs are doing something which can be considered as potential Nobel laureate category scientist in 10 years. Not a single of those persons could really raise hand and said, this is the name. There is none. Can you believe it? There is none. So why, what is this development? This development, as Jabbar Sahib is also here in Emory, one of the finest institutions. He does claim that, India, and we all consider India is the fourth. So that is just like the BJP saying we are almost number 3. But daily, in daily lives of Indians, the education or science or development doesn't play any role. Their lives are miserable. High unemployment rates. They do not know, totally directionless. There is no love for science, really. It's just job. We just want to get job. And you see that here in one corridor, they publish the paper. Entire India together cannot publish. One of the liberties corridor publishes that much. So that's the difference. And most of them are not atheists, really. They are really practicing. I mean, Christians go only once in a week or maybe once in a month. But their synagogues are full, Jewish synagogues are full, churches are full. Even in Harvard, if you go, but you never see them talking religion. That's a big difference. I do not know how they balance it. We mix everything together. Raza साहब, गौहर
जी
साहब,
ओके
आप बहुत थके नजर आ रहे हैं.
Yeah.
You look very tired now. Didn't take dinner?
नहीं नहीं आई एम नॉट दैट टायर्ड
You know, Miraji,
नजर का धोखा है कुछ
his personality is so comprehensive, holistic. He is one of the finest poets in Urdu.
Yeah, I like the recent one you shared.
And the one he's not a romantic ghazal type poet. Very, he falls into the category of those following the lines of Faiz or others who writes for people. The substance is full of, And I'll say that though the time has passed, it will be very unjustified if we just leave you without it.
Oh,
Spare your 5 minutes and just recite your latest very good nazm. That
yeah,
Shabnam.
the recent.
Your
Wonderful.
wife, your
Yes,
wife
please.
last week was
Yeah,
putting
yeah,
that,
that's a good.
Gauhar's new poem. Please,
Mm.
you inspire people.
Yeah, I won't take more than 5 minutes. So thank you for your patience.
यहाँ इतना सह लिया थोड़ा सा 5 मिनट और
अब सब थक चुके हैं
नहीं नहीं नहीं
जग
जाना
जाएंगे.
था मेरे ख्याल में तो कभी और सही
नहीं करेंगे. एक 4 लाइन ही सुना दीजिए
बता
फिर.
देता हूँ जो शायद पहले भी सुनाई होगी लेकिन याद नहीं है मुझे पहले सुनाई या नहीं सुनाई
पूरा सेशन कर दें आपका इसी पे लगता है. वो
जब
बेटर
सब
होगा.
ये कहें
that's a good
खामोश
idea.
रहो
हाँ,
जब सब ये कहें खामोश रहो जब सब ये कहें कुछ भी न कहो जब सब ये कहें है वक्त बुरा जब सब ये कहें ये वक्त नहीं बेकार की बातें करने का जब सब ये कहें कलियों का चटकना क्या कम है फूलों का महकना क्या कम है, शाखों का लचकना क्या कम है, बिंदिया का चमकना क्या कम है, जुल्फों का बिखरना क्या कम है, प्यालों का छलकना क्या कम है। जब इतना सब है कहने को, जब इतना सब है लिखने को, क्या जिद है कि ऐसी बात करो जिस बात में खतरा जान का हो।
Oh,
क्या
Wow.
जिद है कि ऐसी बात करो जिस बात में खतरा जान का हो। जब सब ये कहें खामोश रहो, जब सब ये कहें कुछ भी न कहो, तब समझो पतझड़ रुत आई, तब समझो मौसम दार का है, तब सहमी सहमी रूहों को ये बात बताना लाजिम है, आवाज उठाना लाजिम है, हर कर्ज चुकाना लाजिम है। जब सब ये कहें खामोश रहो, जब सब ये कहें कुछ भी न कहो, तब समझो कहना लाजिम है, मैं सच जिंदा है, अल्फाज अभी तक जिंदा हैं, अल्फाज जिंदा हैं।
बहुत खूब।
okay, thank you so much. With that, thank you again, both of you. And with that, we conclude the session. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
तो
Thank
मीरा
you.
जी आपने फ्लेवर लिया, देखिए गौहर साहब का दूसरा रंग।
Very nice blend of poetry
I
and
know.
science.
Yeah, one of the
That's
rare
remarkable.
breed.
Yeah,
One of the
very
rare
nice.
breed. Okay, thank you
Right.
very much, both of you, and we'll meet again.
We'll
Thank you
meet
very much.
again.
Wonderful session.
At the same time, we were in IIT, Mira,
अच्छा, आ- आप
79, IIT Delhi.
आप आईआईटी दिल्ली में थे?
Yes,
हाँ वही वही है।
Which you were in electrical engineering?
right.
Oh, huh. I was in BTech.
78,
I was
79.
there from 1979 to 83.
Yeah.
83 में मेरे को मैं चली गई थी। तो आप कब से कब तक थे?
मैंने एमटेक किया था वहां 78, 79.
तो हम, yeah, our paths must have crossed.
दुनिया
And
बहुत
we
छोटी है।
met earlier, you have
We-
forgotten probably,
कहाँ पे?
long ago, along with Irfan.
इरफान
Yes,
हबीब। हाँ हाँ, एस इरफान हबीब। हाँ
yeah.
हाँ
एस लगाना जरूरी है वरना
हाँ, एस लगाना जरूरी
वो
है।
अलीगढ़ पहुंच जाएंगे। ये
Yes,
भी
Irfan.
मुसीबत। एस
मैं
लगा,
good friend.
एक्स छूटता नहीं मुझसे, बगैर एस के बोलते ही नहीं, कहते भाई मैं एस इरफान अभी हूँ। या गुड।
वाह।
असल में मैं उनको इरफान चचा कहता हूँ।
हाँ
ओ,
जी, आप तो कहते हैं, हाँ
तो वो
बाकी लोगों के लिए
चाचा।
मसला है। या आपके इरफान चचा अभी भी हाजिर।
आप हैं कहाँ? दिल्ली में रहते हैं आप? इंस्टार्ट।
दिल्ली में।
तो अगली बारी मैं, आई विल डेफिनेटली गेट इन टच।
Yeah, get together. I didn't know. I came to know from Asad later
हाँ,
on that you have left Delhi.
राइट राइट। असद से मिली थी मैं, नलिनी और असद से।
Yeah.
हाँ,
So I
उन्हें invite करो।
I will provide you each other's phone
प्लीज।
or email. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get your email and let's stay in touch.